So this week we're reading and discussing Heart of Darkness, a story from the turn of the 20th century. You may already know the film Apocalypse Now was based on Heart of Darkness, but this setting isn't the same. That movie is set during Vietnam War, whereas Heart of Darkness depicts the Belgian colonization of the Congo back in the 1800s. And this is an extraordinarily divisive literary work for many reasons. So let's start talking about Conrad the author and the novella's historical context. The author, Joseph Conrad, is a complex figure in the 20th century literature, to say the least. He's Polish, and English is his third language after Polish and French. Conrad had a difficult and pretty unhappy early life, but later in life he cultivated this public persona as an adventurous writer and a rugged sea captain. The reality, however, was that he did not enjoy working aboard a ship. He only captained a ship one time, having been appointed when the previous captain died. And since Heart of Darkness is set largely on the Congo River, it's important to know that Conrad himself did sail up the Congo and witness firsthand the colonial practices of the Belgians. He had gone seeking something like the glory of adventure, but the outcome instead was extensive health problems, including malaria and gout. A lot of biographers cite his time in Central Africa as the cause of Conrad's psychological breakdown. Given Conrad's experiences in the Congo, it's very widely accepted that Marlowe, who's the central character in Heart of Darkness, is a kind of stand-in for Conrad. In the story, Marlowe is a rugged 30-something sailor who seeks a position as captain of a steamer, and it's really kind of hard to miss those parallels. The story was originally published in 1899, first as a magazine serial released in 3 parts. This was at a time when European powers were eagerly colonizing several regions across the continent of Africa. This novella shows what that looked like in 1899, and Heart of Darkness is all about the colonial practices of Belgium, which had established a notoriously brutal colony in Congo. You can see that in a purple-gray color here at the center of the 1899 map. You can also see it more clearly on the map from about 60 years later in 1958 with the Belgian Congo in magenta. Also, take note of how many countries are still colonies controlled by European powers in 1958. Getting back to the story, it's important to keep in mind that Conrad doesn't name Belgium specifically, but his immediate audience would certainly have connected his story to those real-world events, and they would have situated the action there in their minds, especially because of Conrad's voyage on the Congo River. The river that Marlowe is going up in Central Africa is agreed to be the Congo River. Let's get into the specific historical context then. Back in the 1880s, a decade or two before the story was published, Belgium was ruled by King Leopold II. He saw other European powers expanding their influence on other continents, and he thought Belgium should have the same thing. Publicly, Leopold said that Belgium would go on to Central Africa to end the slave trade, but privately his exact wording was, "I do not want to risk losing a fine chance to secure for ourselves a slice of this magnificent African cake," as cited in Hochschild 1998, page 58. As those words indicate, he was only interested in a civilizing mission in the Congo, insofar as that would mean economic opportunities for himself personally and for Belgium as a country, with things like the rubber trade. Even among some intensely brutal treatment of indigenous peoples by colonial powers across the African continent, the Belgian Congo stands out as being uniquely brutal. Millions of people were maimed, and millions were killed or died of disease or exhaustion from forced labor. The estimated death toll is around 10 million. If you've never heard about Leopold II or the Belgian Congo, it's probably in part because of World War I. Belgium's colonial practices were revealed to the international community around the beginning of the 20th century. But soon after that, starting in 1914, Belgium suffered its own brutal 4-year occupation by the Germans in World War I. Belgium was so demoralized afterwards that the international community didn't really talk about the Belgian Congo anymore. However, the Congo Free State, later called the Belgian Congo, didn't regain independence from Belgium until 1960. So, All of this context is the backdrop for the story, both with Conrad's own experiences and with the real-world historical context. To get into Conrad's style, be prepared for a very stream of consciousness flow, and I should add that it reads as a very old-fashioned style of writing. It was pretty cutting edge and experimental in its day, and it is part of what kicked off a literary movement called modernism, which is marked by rejection of tradition in all sorts of ways. So look for how the content and style could work on that level. Here, structurally, the story is basically a giant flashback. It starts on a boat in London, and Marlowe tells the other people on the boat with him about what happened years before when he was in the Congo. So with this stream of conscious style, you'll notice that Marlowe himself doesn't always seem 100% sure about what he's trying to communicate. Like he's kind of working out his experiences in the Congo and what they mean for him as he's sharing him. There's a combination of certainty and uncertainty that leaves a lot to explore, and that's what we're doing this week. And here are a list of a variety of references from what we've looked at. And as always, thank you to Karen Kaiser.